CP, here you go.
Voices blending, melodies ascending, harmony in the air. Our songs are never ending. In the barbershop we create magic. Brad and John show, yeah. It's pure classic. No instruments needed, just our vocal range. Notes flying high, it's our musical exchange. Tracy's station may try, but they can't compete. Our barbershop style, it can't be beat. Oh, the harmony of voices, so sweet. In the barbershop of life, our tunes will repeat. No need for instruments, no need for a band. Just the Brad and John show, the finest in the land.
You know, I feel like I'm floating in air when I ever play that, John. I feel like I'm laying down a field of tall grass, and it's a nice, sunny, beautiful day. Why is it snowing outside, right? What's the problem?
When you're floating up to the clouds, I just think of bradsquad.cloud.
That is John Combest, Combest, and that is our Friday intro, which is one of my favorite things I've ever done, which is, I love Barbershop, and that came out so well. Okay, John Combest, before I do anything this morning, I have to mention a person's name, and if there was a big thank you hug or thank you handshake or thank you $100 bill I could send through the radio right now, I would do it. Ryan Lehn, Lehn, from K&N Commercial Refrigeration. I will explain the entire story in B Block, but let me just say that I spent 4.5 hours with my SUV stuck in the snow at the Westplex 107 transmitter site yesterday afternoon. Actually, I didn't get out there till like 7:30 last night. So I didn't have a good day yesterday. And I will explain the whole thing in the B Block. But I just wanted to, before I get going, Ryan, thank you, dude. You didn't have to do what you did, and I do appreciate it. Okay, now, that's John Combest. You heard from him just a few seconds ago. Combest, put a John in front of that, put a .com after it, you get johncombest.com. He does this thing every single day of his life for the past 23 years, and we bring you what he has is a whole list of all important stuff you should know what's going on in the state of Missouri, but we knock it down to 3 things. We bring in this guy right here.
I'm Casey Kasem.
And he starts it off by saying things like,
and here they are.
And then he says,
in third place,
Brad, it's a unique juxtaposition on my website today. 2 headlines back to back on the same company. One of your favorite companies, Brad, Ameren, specifically Ameren, Missouri. Now, KMOV is reporting, quote, Missourians could see Ameren bills go up by 15%. Customers asked to testify at price hike hearings. So a woman from KMOV went out, Brad, and talked a little bit about the fact that at the Missouri Public Service Commission, they're going to be holding hearings throughout the Ameren coverage area to get some input on Ameren rate increase. Now, for their part, Ameren says they need these rate increases to improve the resiliency of their power grid. They got to upgrade some of their materials, Brad. If you want reliable power, you got to update the grid. Now, I will point out, Brad, that this isn't a great story for Ameren. I think it's a pretty fair story. The reporter did kind of, frankly, the paint by numbers thing where you get a statement from an angry customer, you get a corporate guy on Zoom wearing a suit coat without a tie, then you get somebody from an interest group. They got somebody from the NAACP, curiously a white attorney representing the NAACP. The reporter's black, so whatever. And then you get a quote from Ameren, Illinois, and then you come back and you say, hey, everybody should go to the Public Service Commission and make your voice heard. It's kind of a paint-by-numbers story. So, Brad, we have that piece of it, but then we also have a piece from the News Tribune in Jefferson City, and the headline, Brad, is much different. It's Ameren adds $75 million in rebates and incentives for customers. Now, Brad, this is kind of a unique pairing, right? It's kind of good news on one hand with the incentives and the rebates, and then it's kind of like, Ameren wants more money from you. What do you think of this, Brad?
John, first off, aren't we paying for reliable power already?
No, we're paying for a little bit of solar, and we also plug an electrode into a potato like you do in a high school science experiment and see if you can generate some energy.
Okay, let me give you a parallel. You don't like my things I say. Okay, when you go to the gas station and you pump gas in your car, aren't you expecting that the gas doesn't have any water in it? And
I think so. Yeah.
But what if the guy came out and said, well, you know what? We're going to have to raise the gas $1 a gallon because we need to make sure there's no water that can get in our main tank that comes into your car tank. So that's why we're raising our price for $1. I go, dude, aren't you not supposed to have water in the gas tank right now? Isn't that what you do? Isn't that your requirement that we put pure gas into our car? It's the same thing to me if they're saying, well, you have to pay more for reliable power. Okay, well, let me ask you this. Right now, if I call up Ameren UE this morning and say, you know what, I heard you want me to pay more for reliable power. I've got unreliable power. Can I get that discount? You know what I'm saying?
I see what you're saying, Brad. And I think that I would guess that most people understand that Ameren and other utilities have to upgrade their infrastructure. The criticism is always, well, it should come out of the company profits. And then these are the type stories, and this reporter didn't do it from KMOV, but these are the stories where somebody will say, can you believe Ameren executives earned X amount of dollars last year? Well, Mikey Tiddlywinks, who's in a wheelchair, can't afford to heat his home because Spire and Ameren executives make so much money.
Well, the other thing
usually they do the class warfare out here.
Well, I get that. And the other thing that gets me about this as well, too, is the fact that they're going to have public hearings. Do you think there's going to be, unless they're paid or they're Ameren employees, hiding behind the fact that they are Ameren employees, do you think anybody's going to go to Jefferson City and say, you know what, I'm a customer of Ameren, you know what, and their power is right on the 60 hertz, and it's great power, and I put my meter on it, and I think we should be paying double. There's not one stupid person in the state of Missouri that's going to show up at a hearing and say, we think they should be paying, or they should be charging us more. Don't you agree? Why even have the damn...
I'm sure. Now, my only quibble with what the Public Service Commission has said, and by the way, Brad, we should point out that the Public Service Commission hearings on this rate increase in the St. Louis area, there's one on January 22nd at the St. Charles County Administration Building. That's at noon. And then there's one at St. Louis Community College, Forest Park, colloquially known as Fopo Coco. That's at 6 p.m. I'm going to tell you what the Missouri PSC did wrong. Don't have a hearing in St. Charles County at noon and then have one in the city after dark. You flip-flop those. Don't make your employees or concerned citizens have to go to St. Louis City after the sun sets. Have people go to God's country, a safe area, St. Charles County, at 6 p.m., and have the city one when you're least likely to get carjacked or shot or whatever. Do that at noon. So that was an error on the PSC's part.
Fopo Coco, is that what you said?
Yeah, Fopo Coco, Forest Park Community College.
I got a question on that one.
It does not compete with the gem of our region, Brad, which was Harvard on the Highway, Florissant Valley Community College.
Well, we used to call it 270 Tech as well, too. 270 Tech.
And Brad, let me point out too, what I love about this is you say, wow, there's a disparity in stories here. This morning, everybody at Ameren, by the way, they're not at work, but they're sending it around. They're sending around the headlines. The comms team is sending it to IR and the executive saying, look at this headline from the Tribune. Ameren adds $75 million in rebates and in customers. A year ago, Brad, people at Ameren were sitting around saying, okay, PSC is going to have hearings probably in January. Good news team, what do you got? Well, we're giving away some incentives for poor people. We're going to incentivize businesses to save a little money. We're helping people pay for thermostats. We can announce that in September. Nope. That's when the comms team says, no. We're going to hold all the good news. We're going to put out a release. Once we start getting coverage about the rate increase and people start getting pissed off, we're going to put out the $75 million in rebates and how Uncle Herbert and Aunt Edna got a brand new thermostat subsidized by Ameren. Look at what Ameren's doing for the community. And then you go to your philanthropy arm that has a story about how little Jimmy, who got his foot ran over and is in a wheelchair, Ameren gave him a new, electric wheelchair. You save all those stories. You reach out to the media late December, early January. You get the good news out there. And then people see Dueling headlines and say, yeah, Ameren wants more money, but, they do offer rebates. And I'm too lazy to check it out. But, they do some good stuff for customers.
John, I ask you this all the time. You always say, I've never seen that, and I'm not going to watch it because you told me to.
I'm not going to, but I'm sure it's a great movie, though, Brad.
Have you ever watched The Wizard of Oz?
It was on a couple days ago and not. I have seen Wicked, though, which is a far superior performance.
You have never in your life watched The Wizard of Oz, ever?
I have, and you know what, Brad? I am paying no attention to the man behind the curtain.
Well, you know why? Because you are the man behind the curtain.
I am not, Brad. I'm a wacky guy on the radio with his pal Brad.
No, you just revealed what goes on behind the scenes of corporate America all over the point where, because John lived it for how many years? 12 and a half years?
12 and a half. It would be like if a major company was suing customers in a small Missouri city. So you set up a philanthropy to give the city a whole bunch of money right before the trial comes, I'm not saying any companies did that, but if I was working for a communist like Syngenta, not a good company like, a former Midwest-centered ag company. Brad, speaking of agriculture, we're a little late for story number 2. Let's get into it.
Up a notch to number 2.
Missouri Ag Director Chris Chinn is coming back under the Kehoe administration. She's been there under Governor Parson. She's done such a great job that Mike Kehoe is not replacing her. Brad, she had a unique anecdote about Mike Kehoe. She was asked by the good folks at Brownfield Ag News. You talked about Brownfield this week. Megan Grebner asked Chris Chinn, hey, what's going to be different? Chris Chinn says, I think we'll be going at a faster pace under Mike Kehoe. She didn't say this. This is John's interpretation. Governor Parson was a good old boy sheriff. He was a law and order guy. He was just a down-home guy. Mike Kehoe is a businessman. You know what I'm saying, Brad? He's going to move at a faster pace. Chris Chinn says he wants to see things happen quickly because he knows that Missouri's economy needs to have fast reaction times. Chris also pointed out that Missouri broadband has done a pretty good job. The whole community has done a good job bringing broadband into rural areas that, 5-10 years ago didn't have it or more connected now. So I would suggest folks go and read this piece. Chris she's from the northeast part of the state. You can't say enough about how great Chris Chinn is. She's been an agriculture leader. She's had, positions with American Farm Bureau and other groups. She is my, Brad, pick to be governor in the election of 2032.
Really?
I'll go out and say right now that I would sign on to a campaign for Chris Chinn for governor in 2032.
Now, how old is she?
I would say Chris is roughly my age. And I would say Chris is I'm 47. I would say Chris is probably 47.
So her background is she has a law degree or anything like that?
No, she runs a cattle and hog operation. She grows corn and soybeans up in the northeast part of the state.
Interesting. So she is a real hands-on business person then, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they built that business. Her and her husband, Kevin, built that business. They're up in Clarence, Missouri, which is Shelby County. And point of fact, her mother-in-law, Kathy Chinn, ran for state representative. And I met her in the year 2000. This is why I have a soft spot for the Chinns. Kathy Chinn was running for state rep. And my job when I traveled up there in northeast Missouri, I was like the Maytag repairman. I would set up in like a county courthouse and nobody wanted to come talk to me. I was like the Missouri Public Service Commission, Brad. I would just set up and nobody would come talk to me. And one of the people who was very kind to me was a woman named Kathy Chinn. And that is Chris Chinn's mother-in-law.
Interesting. Well, John, this is where John and I have this juxtaposition of opinions of people because I like hands-on kind of people and John doesn't.
I hate him, Brad.
John,
I want somebody sitting in an ivory tower looking down their nose at people.
That's exactly what John wants the corporate guy to never have any contact with a hoi polloi, and I'm the guy that wants to wade out into the crowd and shake hands. That's the difference between John and I. Okay, number one.
Speaking of the hoi polloi, you know what's coming up next, Brad?
Oh, hold on. What did you say?
I said, you know what's coming up next? Speaking of the hoi polloi, that leads into story number one.
The number one.
The old gray Claire, she ain't what she used to be. She ain't what she used to be. Go cry on MSNBC. Claire McCaskill, Brad, bearing her heart and soul on MSNBC. I found this story thanks to the great Tony Bateo of Tony's Kansas City. I missed this story. Claire McCaskill was on MSNBC earlier this week. Brad, they have a show called Deadline, White House. And Claire came out and she had a really sincere confession, I guess you could say, Brad. She said, candidly, I'm bitter. I'm bitter that a higher political price wasn't paid by Donald Trump. Brad, I'll spare you the transcript. You can find it up today. I have a link up to Tony's Kansas City. I also have a link up to the official MSNBC transcript. Brad, did you know that Claire knows that people weren't really voting for Donald Trump? No, people were just mad at incumbents in 2024, Brad. So don't start thinking that Americans have rejected the Democratic Party or progressive policies. They're just anti-incumbent, Brad, and we see it all the time. There's really nothing to write home about. Anyway, kudos to Claire, the old gray mayor Claire, for admitting that she's really just bitter, Brad.
Ah, man. You know what's so interesting about this? We're in the broadcast business, and technically cable is not broadcast. But if you have a station that you have also all sorts of high-priced talent on, which NBC, MSNBC, and CNN do, and all of a sudden, or maybe not all of a sudden, but over a period of time, the ratings just go in the tank. The first thing they do is they change out the talent, and typically to do two things: to A, give it a fresh face, and B, cut payroll. Right? Yeah. How in the world can CNN or MSNBC make? How I know they don't break out, and at least they don't think on their parent companies, they don't break it out line by line as far as cost and income on each individual unit. Maybe they do. I don't know. How can they justify even being on the air anymore? You know what I'm saying? There's nobody.
I think it's a public service, Brad. I think they're doing. Where else are you going? What other station is going to have Claire McCaskill on?
Well, the problem is you would think that the Dems by now would have gotten the serpent head message with Jim Carville essentially saying, look, we lost, we screwed up, we have to change. Isn't that essentially what Carville's saying?
Yeah, it's true, Brad. But James Carville is saying that in a sensible tone, and he's delivering it to adults. But the base of the Democratic Party today is at a protest on the Washington University campus, burning Israel flags and saying no more, money for bombs.
Man, I just don't get it. It just doesn't make any sense to me. But then again, a lot of things don't. Okay, we have to take a break, and I start off the B block by telling my bizarre story of woe yesterday about how I got saved by, are you ready for this, John?
I'm ready.
A coyote hunter.
Ooh, I love it, Brad. Okay. And you don't mean Coyote Ugly, like the movie with the hot
No, I'm talking about the real four-legged animals. This dude was out hunting coyotes, and he saved my skin. Okay,